אנחנו נמצאים בתחנת הרכבת של רודניה. כאן הייתה תחנת הרכבת שבה היו מגיעים כל החסידים, כל רחבי רוסיה לרבי. כל החסידים במשך כל הדורות, מאז שבאה הרכבת לעולם, היו מגיעים ללובביץ' דרך תחנת הרכבת הזאת של רודניה.
Pesha the wagon driver, among many others, used to wait for the many Hasidim who came to bask in the presence of the Rebbe. There was no other means of transportation at that time, and the Hasidim made their way to Lubavitch on a horse-drawn carriage, a trip which lasted 2 hours. In the wagon of Pesha, the wagon driver, everyone was equal. The learned chassid and the simple chassid, all squeezed together on the same broken bench. Already as a child, it was obvious that he had the talents of a genius. At the age of 10, his father took him out of Cheder and hired a private teacher who was great in Torah. In 1847, he married his niece, the Rebbetzin Sterna, the daughter of his brother, Rabbi Chaim Shner Zalman. The wedding was very joyous, and thousands of Hasidim took part in the celebration. But the happiness did not last long. During the Sheva Brachos, the bride was diagnosed with a very serious illness, and after a period of 3 months, she passed away. Two years later, in 1849, the Rebbe Maharash married his cousin, the Rebbetzin Rivka, the granddaughter of the Mittler Rebbe. At a young age, his father sent him all over the world in order to help Jews in need. Although he was his youngest son, his father, the Tzemach wanted him specifically to take his place in the leadership of Chabad. He wrote to the Chassidim, "You must listen to him as you listen to me." On the 13th of Nisan, 1866, after the passing of the Tzemach Tzedek, the Rebbe Maharash replaced him in the leadership of Chabad. The Rebbe Maharash used to say the following saying, "The world is of the opinion that if it is not possible to go from below, then it is necessary to go from above. And I say that from the beginning, one should go from above." During the leadership of the Rebbe Maharash, the Jews of Russia endured great suffering at the hands of the Russian government. The government abused the Jews and even encouraged rioting and pogroms. Thousands of Jews from all parts of Russia and the Ukraine were hurt in those pogroms. The Rebbe did all he could with true self-sacrifice to prevent the pogroms. For that purpose, he met with leaders from all over the world and asked them to intercede with the Russian government and protect their Jewish citizens. The Rebbe traveled many times to the capital city of Petersburg, where he met with heads of state and pressed them to take strong measures against the rioters.
אנחנו נמצאים כאן בצרסקי סילו, כפר המלך, כפר של הצאר. כאן גרו כל הצארים מחוץ לעיר. העיר הזאת נמצאת מחוץ לפטרבורג, כ-25 קילומטר מפטרבורג. וכאן גרו כל בני האצולה של פטרבורג. כבוד בשעת אדמו"ר המהר"ש, כשהיה מגיע לפטרבורג, כדי לבטל את הגזירות על הפרעות שהיו על היהודים, היה יושב פה במקום הזה, במקום המפואר הזה.
The Rebbe's actions were fruitful, and he brought calm to all parts of Russia. In 1882, the Rebbe became seriously ill, and on the 13th of Tishrei, he passed away at the young age of 48. He is buried in the Ohel in Lubavitch, beside his father, the Tzemach Tzedek. Rebbetzin Rivka, the wife of the Maharash, was one of the central figures in Lubavitch. She passed away on the 10th of Shvat, 1914, 31 years after the passing of her husband. She is buried next to the Ohel of our Rebbes and leaders. At the age of 3, he entered the study of his grandfather, the Tzemach Tzedek, every day, at which time the Rebbe would test him and enjoy his company. At the age of 5, he sat and learned Torah with great concentration and diligence. At the age of 8, he began to participate in relating the Chassidus of his father, the Rebbe Maharash. At the age of 14, he started repeating before the Chassidim the Chassidic discourses of his father. The passing of his father, the Rebbe Maharash, at such a young age shocked the Chassidim, who remained orphans, without a leader and Rebbe. His sons were young and refused to take their father's place. During the first year after his father's passing, the Rebbe Rashab withdrew to his room. He did not receive anyone and did not answer any questions, but he did begin to repeat Chassidus for the Chassidim immediately after the passing. Even though he did not accept the leadership officially, thousands of Chassidim flocked to him to hear words of Chassidus and to be blessed by him. The Rebbe also dealt with the general problems of Russian Jewry. For that purpose, he often traveled to many countries and to the capital city of Petersburg. In 1892, the government banished the Jews from Moscow. The Rebbe arranged for them to receive both shelter as well as monetary support. The Rebbe officially accepted upon himself the leadership only 2 years later, in 1894. A turning point in the Hasidic world, the Rebbe establishes a yeshiva by the name of Tomchei Temimim for young students in Lubavitch. This yeshiva quickly becomes the source from which many Hasidim stem. The Rebbe thus halts the spiritual deterioration of the young generation.
אנחנו נמצאים כאן במוזיאון שנבנה בחצר רבותינו נשיאינו בלובביץ'. המוזיאון ממוקם איכשהו כאן במקום הזה. כאן במקום הזה, זה המקום, הבניין הזה היה הזל הגדול. מולו, הבית הגדול הזה היה הבית של כבוד קדושת אדמו"ר הריי"צ. הבית היותר קטן היה הבית של אדמו"ר הרש"ב. כאן היה הזל הקטן, הבית של אדמו"ר המהר"ש, וכאן היה הבית של הרבנית רבקה.
Here, in this place, the Tomchei Temimim Yeshiva was established. It stood for more than 20 years until 1918. In 1902, the financial situation of Russian Jewry was at its worst, especially so of Jews living in the small villages. The Rebbe Rashab committed himself to helping them. One of his actions was to establish a large knitting factory in the city of Dubrovna in White Russia. Many Jews from that city and from surrounding villages were employed there.
אנחנו נמצאים כעת בעיר דוברובנה. העיר דוברובנה הייתה עיר חסידית עוד מזמנו של אדמו"ר הזקן. רובם של תושבי העיר היו חסידי חב"ד. החסיד הידוע ביותר של העיר היה הגאון החסיד רב נחמיה דוברובנה, שהיה חתנו של רב חיים אברהם, בנו של אדמו"ר הזקן. וכשמגיעים למדור אדמו"ר הרש"ב, כותב הרבי בלוח היום יום. בשנת תרס"ב מייסד, זאת אומרת אדמו"ר הרש"ב, מייסד בעזרת האחים הנדיבים כל יעקב, בית חרושת להריגה ולמתווה צמר בעיר דוברובנה פלח מוגילב. ובערך 2,000 יהודים עובדים בו ומתפרנסים בו ברווח. וכאן אנחנו נמצאים, מאחוריי נמצא המפעל שעובד עד היום הזה. הגרמנים יימח שמם כשהגיעו לדוברובנה, הם אספו את כל היהודים של דוברובנה בחצר המפעל היהודי. וכאן, בחצר המפעל, הם רצחו את כולם בימי מלחמת העולם השנייה.
In the year 1910, the Rebbe sent 7 students and a Rosh Yeshiva from Lubavitch to the city of Hebron in Eretz Yisrael, where he established the Teres Emes Yeshiva. In the year 1915, during the course of the First World War, while the German army was making its way towards the vicinity of Lubavitch, the Rebbe and his family left Lubavitch and moved to the city of Rostov-on-Don in the south of Russia. Rostov then became the capital of Chabad for the next 8 years. In the year 1918, the Rebbe bought this building on Brodsky Street. The Rebbe lived there for 1.5 years until his passing. During the past few years, Agudas Chasidei Chabad redeemed the building and established a yeshiva where tens of students from all parts of the world study. Several years ago, the mikveh which the Rebbe built was discovered. It was renovated for the benefit of the students and for the many visitors who come there. After Purim in the year 1920, the Rebbe's illness worsened. In the evening of the 2nd of Nisan, he asked to have his bed moved to the room where he received Hasidim for Yechidus. His last words were, "I am going to heaven. The writings I leave to you." The Rebbe was laid to rest in the old cemetery in Rostov. In 1939, when the Hasidim heard that the Soviet government was planning to destroy the old Jewish cemetery, they transferred his holy body at night, through great self-sacrifice, to the new cemetery. The Rebbe Rayatz was the only son of the Rebbe Rashab and the Rebbe Stern Sora. He is named after his grandfather from his mother's side, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak of Avruch, who was the son of the Tzemach Tzedek. Because he was an only son, his father raised him with special devotion. In spite of his young age, he was sent many times on special missions, some of which were dangerous, for the benefit of the general public. When he was 17 years old, he married the Rebbetzin Nechamadina, daughter of Rabbi Avram Schneerson of Kishinev, the grandson of the Tzemach Tzedek. At the age of 18, the Rebbe Rashab appointed him to be the head of the Tomchei Temimim Yeshiva in Lubavitch. The Rebbe did a great deal to improve the situation of Russian Jews. For that purpose, he traveled many times to the capital city of Petersburg and met with heads of state. Many times his activities entailed real self-sacrifice. The Rebbe Rayatz was imprisoned 4 times because of his activities on behalf of Russian Jewry. In 1915, he moved, together with his father, the Rebbe Rashab, to the city of Rostov-on-Don in the south of Russia. Before his passing, his father told him, "Yosef Yitzchok, you should have real self-sacrifice for teaching Torah with fear of heaven and for maintaining Judaism." After his father's passing, the Rebbe accepted the leadership upon himself. It is a period of terror of the tyrannical communist government, who has set as its objective the uprooting of Judaism from the Jewish nation. Rivers of blood flowed throughout the country, and the main victims were the Torah-observant Jews. One of the first things which the communists did after they took power was to uproot from the Jews their belief in one God. With that purpose in mind, they gathered reckless young Jews who were members of the Communist Party and established the Yevsektia, which means the Jewish unit. The first action of the Yevsektia was to close all the yeshivas and chadorim and to destroy the Jewish community. The most severe punishments were imposed on anyone who opened a yeshiva or a cheder. Many Jews were sent to the Siberian wilderness without any trial. At a future time, the government gave an order to close all synagogues and religious institutions. All yeshivas and Jewish schools were closed.
Быстрее давай, пошевеливайся! Давай быстрее! Бегом, бегом давай!
The Rebbe fought against all this with true self-sacrifice. For that purpose, the Rebbe established an underground organization whose objective was to renew the activities of the destroyed Jewish communities. The Rebbe sent emissaries to all Jewish centers in order to open underground yeshivas and chadorim. The teachers faced great danger. Whoever was caught teaching children Torah was arrested immediately and sent for many years to Siberia without any trial. Finding the organizer would have meant his certain death. The Rebbe did all he could with complete self-sacrifice to spread Judaism in all parts of Russia. He recruited 9 Hasidim who took an oath of self-sacrifice until the last drop of blood, should the need arise. The government realized that the only thing hindering their plan to uproot Judaism was the Rebbe Rayatz. They began tightening their hold and threatened to put him behind bars. In 1924, the Rebbe was forced to leave Rostov and settle in the city of Leningrad, today the city of Petersburg. This house on 22 Machavaya Street in Leningrad became the center of the secret activities of the Rebbe throughout the entire Soviet Union. The activities did not stop. With the coming of the Rebbe to Leningrad, they actually increased. The communist government decided to put a stop to the Rebbe's activities. On the eve of the 15th of Sivan, 1927, after midnight, came a powerful knocking on the door of the Rebbe's house. The Soviet secret police break into the house and arrest the Rebbe ryots. The Rebbe is taken to the Shpalerka prison, not far away.
כאשר באו לעצור את אדמו"ר הריי"צ, היה הרבי נשיא דורנו באיזה מקום עם הרבנית חיימושקה. כשהם הגיעו לכאן למקום, עלתה הרבנית חיימושקה לבית, כשראתה שנמצאים פה אנשי הקג"ב, היא אמרה לרבי שעמד פה למטה, היא אמרה לו, שניירסון, יש לנו אורחים בלתי קבועים. ואז מיד הרבי התחיל לפעול, לעשות פעולות להצלתו של כבוד קדושת אדמו"ר הריי"צ. כאן, במקום הזה, עמדה המכונית של הגפ"ו, שלקחה את אדמו"ר הקודם, אדמו"ר הריי"צ, לקחה אותו מפה לכיוון השפלרנה.
This is the route taken by the Rebbe in the early hours of the morning of the 15th of Sivan, from his house to the Shpalerka prison. The very name Shpalerka terrified the residents of Leningrad. Tens of thousands were executed in the cellars of Shpalerka. The verdict was settled in advance. At the end of the interrogation, the interrogator informed the Rebbe, "Within 24 hours, you will be executed by a firing squad." The Rebbe endured terrible torture while in prison. The Rebbe described dramatically all that befell him in the diary which he wrote. The tefillin remained with me. The soldier who accompanies me lays his weapon down and looks at me with the look of a tiger. He opens the door, and we walk in a narrow hallway which is lit by small candles. I begin to beg the soldier, not just ask, but to actually beg him to let me put on tefillin. Incidentally, I tell him it's difficult for me to walk quickly. "No," the soldier says, "I will not let you put on tefillin, and if you insist, I will put you in solitary confinement." Thus we walk, he in front of me and I in back of him. Seeing that he would not allow me, I decided to put on tefillin as I walk. I put the tefillin on my arm, and I didn't yet manage to put the tefillin on my forehead when he hit me and pushed me towards the iron stairs leading down, and I fell down all the stairs. Thank God I did not break my arms and legs. In great pain and with great effort, I walk up several stairs. I feel that when I fell, the metal clasp of my belt broke, and the metal tore the skin of my stomach. My heart contracts with pain. Soon I'll faint. "You will see," the soldier screams at me. "When you've lain 3 or 4 days among the mice in complete darkness, in the mire and in the mud, it's impossible to make a house of prayer for Jews in Shpalerka." Ignoring the pain, I hold onto the stair railing and heavily walk up, one step at a time. "Petya," the commander says to one of the prison guards, "receive the merchandise and do your job." The man, or rather the animal, by the name of Petya, comes out from one of the cells and approaches me. When he saw me from up close, he spoke to himself. What a wonder they have started to bring here such rags. It goes without saying, a fitting parasite, a Žid with a beard. Go, old man, for an interrogation. Never mind, we'll clean you up really well over here. We'll break your bones one at a time. Why are you so pale? Petya asks. Are you also sick? After the interrogation, you can die. It's very quiet here. No one will disturb you. No one will know anything at home either. The doctor will affix his seal, and it'll be registered in the office, and the record will be destroyed. The body will be thrown into one of the pits below. I cannot say that his words made no impression on me. It's already over 40 hours that no water has touched my mouth. Hours of pain and torture to the body, and above all, torture to the soul. Tefillin! Tefillin! Night. It's announced. Lie down and sleep. I've already prayed the night prayer and I lie down at my place. A chill ran through our bodies as we heard footsteps nearing our room. A moment later, soldiers open the locks and light up the room. We, the inmates, looked at each other with fear of death. The soldiers looked at me with scorn. You come with us, one of them told me. I saw that my neighbors burst out crying. I went out to the hall. One of the soldiers walked in front of me. 4 others, with swords in their hands, walked behind me. Remove your hat and arrange your clothing so that your tzitzis will not be visible, cried one of my escorts. No, I will not remove my hat. I command you to remove your hat, or your end will be bitter. I will not remove my hat. I want to know if you know who I am. Who are you? The Lubavitcher Rebbe. So what? The Lubavitcher Rebbe is not terrified or affected by intimidation. After intensive effort and activity to release the Rebbe, which included turning to many heads of state all over the world, the government commuted the death penalty which the Rebbe had received to 3 years of exile in the city of Kostroma. On the 3rd of Tammuz, the Rebbe Rayatz was released from prison and sent to exile in the distant city of Kostroma. The intensive activities to obtain his freedom were finally fruitful. And on the 12th of Tammuz, when the Rebbe presented himself to the secret police, he was informed that an order had been received to release him from his place of exile. On the following day, on the 12th and 13th of Tammuz, the Rebbe left Kostroma and went to his home in Leningrad. These days, the 12th and 13th of Tammuz are celebrated as a holiday of redemption for the Rebbe and for Hasidim. After the release, the Soviets continued to threaten the Rebbe that they would imprison him again. They forced the Rebbe to leave Russia. On the day following Simchas Torah in the year 1927, the Rebbe left Russia and settled in the city of Riga in Latvia. The Soviets figured that with the Rebbe being outside the borders of Russia, the underground activities would diminish. But the Rebbe continued his intensive activities for the sake of Russian Jews. The Rebbe continued to operate the underground in the Soviet Union with full force. He sent emissaries and established chadorim and yeshivas. The central yeshiva was in the city of Vitebsk, where more than 200 students from all over the Soviet Union studied.
כאן מאחוריי בניין בית כנסת חב"ד של העיר ויטבסק. הבית כנסת הזה עמד על תילו עד מלחמת העולם השנייה. במלחמת העולם השנייה הוא נחרב, וככה הוא עומד ולא נגעו בו עד היום הזה.
In 1929, the Rebbe made his historic trip to Eretz Yisrael. His trip lasted about 2 weeks, and during this time he visited the Western Wall, the holy places, and the graves of tzaddikim. From Israel, the Rebbe traveled for the first time to the United States. The Rebbe stayed approximately 10 months in the United States, and there he visited many Jewish communities, met with Jews, and encouraged them to strengthen their observance of Torah and mitzvahs. In 1934, the Rebbe moved to the city of Warsaw in Poland. Two years later, the Rebbe moved to the village of Otvotsk, next to the Tomchei Tzmimim yeshiva, which was situated in that village. With the outbreak of the Second World War on the 1st of September 1939, the Rebbe Rayatz left Otvotsk with the intention of traveling to Riga in Latvia and from there to the United States. But because of the circumstances of the war, the Rebbe was forced to remain in Warsaw for several months. During this time, the city was heavily bombarded by the Germans. Miraculously, the Rebbe was not hurt during this bombardment. Of the days of terror in Warsaw, the Rebbe Rayatz told the following. In the city of Warsaw where we stayed, we were subjected to a torrent of bombs and fire. Thousands of people were buried beneath the ruins of their homes as a result of the bombing. During the war, at the time when the city was bombed, entire buildings collapsed within seconds, and all the inhabitants, among them women, children, and the elderly, were burned and buried alive under the rubble. After the bombing, dead bodies as well as the wounded lay on the ground in frightening disarray. And this is a small part of the bitter fate which befell us during the war in Poland. The 12th of Tishrei 1939 is recorded by me as one of the most difficult days. On that day at 12 noon, we left the house to find shelter in a deep cellar underground. After the mincha prayer at 4 o'clock, the cellar shook from heavy bombing in the nearby streets. Flames covered the streets, and large buildings collapsed, burying all those who were in the buildings. When we realized the greatness of the danger and feared that we might not survive, We left the cellar and ran to find shelter in one of the gates of a large house. It's impossible to describe the picture of the burning street and buildings, screams of the miserable ones who were burned, and the great fear, especially of the women, children, and the elderly. The bombing became stronger from moment to moment. A sea of flames surrounded the quarter. Clouds of black smoke covered the face of the sky and blocked the rays of the sun. And thus for several hours we ran from place to place, helpless, trying to find shelter from the bombing. In one of the shelters, several hundred people from different walks of life gathered. Our group, which included myself, my family, and tens of students from Yeshivas Tomchei Tmimim, said Tehillim. Suddenly a great explosion shook us. This was a bomb which had fallen nearby. At that moment, streams of fire spread around us, and each one of us saw death before his eyes. Spontaneously, a great cry came forth from everyone. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Everyone was certain that these were the last moments of his life. Such a cry of Shema Yisrael, which comes from the depth of the heart, from different types of people with different views of life, I had never heard before. And I ask of God that this cry of Shema Yisrael should remain engraved in my memory forever. Miraculously, the Rebbe was saved from the horrors of Warsaw through the intervention of the American government, which recruited the head of German intelligence, the Admiral Wilhelm Canaris, to the rescue campaign. Canaris sent German intelligence officers who took the Rebbe and his family out of burning Warsaw, transferred them to Berlin, and from there escorted them to the Latvian border. In the month of Adar Aleph 1940, the Rebbe went from Riga to Sweden, and from there sailed by boat to the United States. On the 9th of the second month of Adar, the Rebbe arrived in the United States. Upon the Rebbe's arrival in the United States, he proclaimed, "America is no different." He meant to say that also in America it is possible and necessary to lead complete Jewish lives, just like in Europe. And indeed, under the leadership of the Rebbe, the United States became the world center for spreading the wellsprings of Hasidus throughout the world. As soon as he arrived in the United States, the Rebbe purchased the building at 770 Eastern Parkway. This building has become the World Chabad Center, from where he spread his great light all over the world. 1949, the Rebbe established Kfar Chabad for the Hasidim who succeeded in crossing the communist Iron Curtain and arriving in Israel. In the first years, with the direction of the Rebbe, the residents of Kfar Chabad occupied themselves with agriculture and education. The Rebbe even sent a Sefer Torah to the residents of Kfar Chabad. On Shabbos, the 10th of Shvat, 1950, the Rebbe Rayatz passed away. He was laid to rest in the Chabad section of the Montefiore Cemetery.
בתרחשו הגיע רבי יצחק ליחדרינצלב, שנקראת היום דניפרופטרובסק, לכהן ברבנות, ובא לגור בבניין הזה ברחוב מירונוב ה-20, בקומה השנייה. הרבי בילדותו חי בדירה הזו מתרחשו עד תרחפ"ד. אנחנו נמצאים באותו רחוב, במירונוב ה-9, בבית כנסת הזה התפלל רב לייביק במשך כל השנים עד תרצ"ה. הרבי גם כן כמובן בילדותו, כל השנים שהיה פה בעיר, התפלל פה ולמד פה תורה.
רבי שנימר ינובסקי, רבה של ניקולאייב. לגבי ההיסטוריה החסידית, ביום הבהיר י"א ניסן, טוב רס"ב, נולד בעיר הזאת הרבי, בעיר ניקולאייב.